All right, guys. My name is Nolan, pastor of the Garden Church. This is the Vision Arizona podcast, and we have the joy and honor of leaning in and learning from Pastor Bill Bush. Pastor Bill Bush is from Rock Point Church, both the lead pastor and the founding pastor of one of the most thriving, explosive ministries in the Southwest Valley and really in the nation. Rock Point is in Queen Creek, which is one of the fastest growing regions of the nation. So God has been strategically positioning them for impact. And we're so excited to learn from you today, Uncle Bill.
Yep. Well, first thing I could teach you is we're in the Southeast Valley, not the Southwest Valley.
Okay, fair enough. The broader Southwest region.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here, and I do just want to add value. But you know me, I know me. I'm like you turn on a fire hose. So I don't want anyone to get shocked if all of a sudden you grab it like, hey, let me redirect you and cut you off. Feel free. Because I just want to make sure we're getting to what you wanted us to talk about. So, yeah.
Love it. Bill is a wealth of knowledge, and you truly have years, decades of experience in ministry. And so we're excited to lean in. I so appreciate your time coming out here to the West Valley. Out West is best. And giving us the opportunity to lean. If you're a young church planter, young church leader, this is one of the most significant conversations that you can lean into. So tell us a little bit. First of all, actually tell us a little bit about yourself. You're married. You have a family. You're a pastor. Give us a lay of the land here.
Yeah, I've been married 33 years here, coming up in a few weeks, and I got 3 kids, 3 grandkids, and planted Rock Point about 23 years ago. 2002 is when we started, moved out in 2001, and been a pastor a lot longer, more than half my life. I'm in my 34th year of being a pastor now, so it's been a while. So, yeah.
Bill is one of the very few grandpas that is this level jacked. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is my goal when I'm a grandpa, is to look like this. Phenomenal, man. And Rock Point, give us kind of the lay of the land. How did Easter go? Where are you guys at?
Well, we had a great Easter. I mean, we've been growing, had momentum for years, but we were a little worried because we sent out Daniel Goulding, Echoes Church.
Yes.
And he'd been our teaching pastor for years and went down the street, and we empowered and commissioned people, basically. Took about 1,400 people. And so this was our first Easter since he left. We were worried, and we had about the same number. So we grew as the year before. So it's good that we sent them. We had about 13,500 and something people. And the coolest part is we had just under 1,200 salvations. And it's been kind of, the blessing is for years now, for Easter and Christmas, we've averaged, that was about, the adult attendance was about 11,800.
Unbelievable.
We've averaged about 10% salvation rate for the last several years.
Which is unbelievable.
Yes.
But to think about that, now 13,000 human beings, souls, coming to hear the gospel, 1,200 people say yes to Jesus. That is a megachurch of people making decisions for Christ. That's just an unreal testimony to what God is doing among you guys.
Yeah, and we know that some of them are probably rededications or whatever. We make it really clear when I have them do something, a physical act, before I even pray with them. But I also know that we've over the years had tons of people come, and I ask them their story, and they go, well, I accepted Christ when you did that moment in church, but I didn't raise my hand.
Wow.
So I figure it evens out in the wash. So whatever,
Amazing.
And now our next step is how many can we get baptized in the next, 3-6 months. So, yeah.
Amazing effectiveness for the kingdom of God. Hey, I want to talk a little bit about, what are you guys running right now? Give us kind of the picture of Rock Point, because you guys are a massive church of influence here. Pretty much everybody that I talk to knows what Rock Point is. But we are also connecting with people outside of the Southwest. I'd love to hear. Give us, what is your attendance like on Sunday? How many services? You guys have a property, a building. Just what is the overall lay of the land as far as what Rock Point looks like today in 2025?
Good question. Well, I'm don't want to pastor math it, and I'm really not the best on our numbers. You'd think a pastor would want to know exactly how many. And I know before Echo started, we were bumping up around 8,000 on the weekend. After he left, the 1,400 people, in the time of the year when he took off. And so I believe right now we've grown. We've already added in the few months since he's been gone. I think we're somewhere in that 6,800 to 7,400 range on any given weekend now. So we're pushing back towards, into the 7s, towards 8. But Which is, it's been good. I mean, I'll tell you, I know a lot of guys don't want to send people out like that. It's financially, it's been a little bit, you send over $1 million in giving out the door. And then you build, like you said, what's the lay line? We just opened a brand new children's building that's 26,000 square feet. And it wasn't cheap. Mm-hmm. And when we built it, things got more expensive while we were building it. And our interest rate for the loan went from 4.25 to 8.25.
Unbelievable. What does that translate to?
It translates that just that difference made our payment go up $1 million a year, right when we sent 1.5 million a year out the door. And I only share that because I know that if the one thing about trying to share with a lot of church planters, a lot of you guys are thinking about church planting, or maybe you're really new into it, and you hear the numbers that we have, and you start to say, I can't relate because he doesn't have problems.
Wow.
And here's what I'm going to tell you in all my years of experience and helping churches plant and doing my own churches. The problems are that you still have the same problems. They scale up with you. So the
more
problem
people,
is you still run
more
into
property, more problems.
Yeah, well, because you run into you're worried, or like, man, we need like another $1,200 a month here, or like $10,000 this year, and I'm sitting there going, we need another 1.5 million, or we're in trouble.
Unbelievable.
And when you have staff people, it would be nice to have staff. Yeah, you start to have a financial hiccup, and you're like, there's 122 people that work at Rock Point, and if God doesn't show up, somebody's going to have to not show up for work.
It's a lot of weight to carry.
Yeah, and so it is. And I've had, it's funny, the mentor that I've had in my life, like Lynn Winters is one of them. He used to tell me this back when I was like, he's just like, it must be nice.
Okay.
And he goes, you're going to be looking at someone someday and saying exactly what I'm saying to you. And it is true. It's like we can relate because the principles are still the same. The problems are still there. And about the only thing that's different when you have a large staff and you start to have a financial problem is, sadly, if I'm going to be brutally honest, there's a lot more people between you and your paycheck.
Wow.
Before you're gone. Where early on, the only fear was like, if we don't get in, what am I going to do? I got to go get a job.
Yeah.
But the reality is everything
now
else
you're carrying all these other
it's
families.
the same, and it's hard. And so I can relate. You can relate. It's just scaling it is all you got to look at. So
awesome. The importance of this is I think a lot of us dream about what ministry will be like and we romanticize it, but actually it is a difficult grind. There's a lot of weight on your shoulders. I'm excited to kind of dive into all of this. I want to talk about all this. One, I want to talk about just the concepts of problem solvings because you were a founding you are the founding pastor. You were a church planter, which is significant. So we're going to talk about church planting and solving problems and building momentum and systems and healthy gospel-centered ministry. Then I want to talk a little bit about the fact that not only were you a church planter, but you have scaled upwards and become a sending church. So I want to talk about sending out echoes in this episode. But let's start with the fact that you are a founding pastor. You were a church planter.
Yes.
So today in 2025, 13,000 people at Easter, mega churches of people getting saved. Take me back. How many years ago did you plant the church? And tell us a little bit of that story.
Yes, like I said, 01 is when we moved to the Southeast Valley. I'm from Arizona originally, so I was coming back home. I'd lived in California last good part of 12, 13 years. And when we came, we started a Bible study, and there was 5 families that came. I was like the reverse Moses. I took them from the promised land. We were right at the beach and came into the wilderness.
Yes.
And we started that Bible study in August of 01, and then 1 month later, 9/11.
Oh, wow.
happened.
Yeah, that's right.
And that actually, our Bible study doubled in attendance the week after that happened.
Wow. Okay.
Because people were just freaked out about stuff. And somebody's like, we got to go back to, I don't know. But anyways, we went from at the time, we were only running like 30, 40, and all of a sudden we had 80 in it.
Wow.
And so
people recognize their need.
Yeah. So we started with a couple staff people. We all kind of just ran out here. And one of the reasons why I think in my history, why I want to be so helpful with church planters and be a sending church and supportive is the church I left from, they weren't evil. They just didn't get it.
Yeah.
So when I said I wanted to go plant church, they said, oh, you know what? So you know what? We'll give you some time to raise your support and kind of hand off your job while you're still working here. And then in a month you can go.
Yeah.
So they thought I could do everything I needed to go plant a church in 1 month. So
Good luck. We'll pat you on the butt and pray for you.
So I came back home with 5 families and really had to hurry up to raise support and do all that. It was hard, cashed out my retirement to help.
You cashed out your retirement?
That's how I lived through the first year.
This was like the early days of church planting. Obviously, churches were being planted, but they didn't have a lot of systems back then.
The crazy Cowboys Dark Ages days, man. We didn't know. We were just too stupid. But I think it's still kind of the same. I always say it takes a special kind of stupid to plant a church.
Yeah.
And it still does. But yeah, we know more now.
But cashing out your retirement soup, it's a whole nother level.
Yeah. Well, because I had 2 kids, I had to support them and it was hard.
How old were you then?
I was 31.
Okay.
When we came out here. And so I didn't have a ton of retirement. So that's why it only got me. It supplemented what I raised my support for about a year.
Dude.
But yeah, I probably should put that money back in retirement at some point.
I would like you to.
I think I'm going to be working until like 3 years after Jesus comes back.
Yeah.
So, but anyways, we started Bible study, grew, went into a high school, and we were in the high school for 11 years. And that's another thing I share with a lot of church planners is don't focus on what you don't have. Because that's what gets us caught up. My dad used to say, he was a soldier and sports guy, and taught me, he used to say, you can whine or you can win, but you can't do both at the same time.
Come on now.
And I think one of the biggest things I would encourage anyone out there trying to plant a church is, if you whine, meaning focus on what you don't have, because when you're planting a church, especially when you start, you're focusing on a lot of stuff if you're focusing on what you don't have. And one of the biggest things is, if I only had a building, if I only had this, I go, well, you don't. And if you whine about that, you're going to spend your emotional energy. You're not going to envision. You're going to not understand that God can do stuff. Because we got to 1,300 people in a school.
Oh my goodness.
Now, it does get to a point that it's a lot harder, especially as you grow. We kind of hit a peak.
Okay.
We leveled off at, like, we never got anybody, and then we're bouncing around. So, but it's just, when we were going to build, we had some land. And when we started to build is when the crash happened in like 08, 09.
Yes.
And that's when we were about to build, and we had to put that off. And so it ended up not happening, because end of 09 and 10. So then we had to wait another couple of years. Then we finally, it turned around, we could get some lending. We raised some money, and then it took a year and a half to build the building. So we went in 2013.
Incredible.
And don't get me wrong. If you can get some facilities, you can get some, they do bring momentum.
Traction, yep.
But here's the thing. If all you do is bank on thinking that's going to get you something, it's not. You don't build for momentum. You build from it.
Okay, so take me into that. We are talking to a lot of church planters, or guys that are maybe thinking about it, or guys that are in the trenches right now who are trying to figure out, just like, how do I get to 1,300 people, if that's even a goal at all? You know, how do I get to my second service? How do I reach 50 people this year for Jesus? These are the kinds of goals that most guys have right now who are listening. One thing I know about Rockpoint, even from the super early days, even before you guys launched, is you had momentum. Momentum, or just God's ability to magnetize people to what you were doing for the gospel. That is not something every church or every ministry has. You guys have always had God's hand on you. What are some of the strategic things that you did to make yourselves available to God's anointing and to gain momentum and traction as a church? Really early days. Why did you guys have that?
Well, the real practical things, that, because it's the hows of what we did, and now it's more advanced now, but we were just figuring it out as we went, is one of the things that you do is be the best church at the size you are.
Okay. What does that
Meaning,
mean?
you got to start looking and acting like the size. Get there, get prepared for it. But a lot of churches, we're so small, we can't do all this stuff. Then don't try to act like a large church. See, in other words, like, lean into what you're good at. It's really easy to build a relational culture when you're smaller. So do it well. Sometimes guys are like, I so want to get to the bigger level. You copy all of the things, and you spend so much time trying to do all these ministries, all these things, that you miss out on that relational element. And you don't hear, like what Rockpoint early on, the thing that we finally had to backwards engineer this. Why do people keep saying this? They go, the thing about that I like about Rockpoint is you guys are just, you're real. You're authentic. You're be authentic, be real, be raw, be in people's life, be in the community. Don't get yourself so busy. Like, for example, people would be shocked on how many ministries we do. If you looked at our ministry page of how many we do, a lot, but we're a church that's really large. And yet, surprisingly, I see churches that are a tenth our size that their ministry page list is longer.
Yeah.
And that's part of the not be good at what you're good at. Like, and then the momentum will carry you into the next phase. You always got to be ready, look to build leaders, set those systems, always look out ahead, but lean in. We call it turning into the skid.
Okay.
Because, when you're about to, when you drive in snow and ice, which most Arizonans won't understand this, but a lot of people going to plant churches came from a place where you understand this.
Yes.
That by nature, if you start skidding, if you start sliding one way, your gut instinct is to turn the wheel the opposite way. That'll send you into a spin.
Nope.
What you want to do is turn slightly into it, regain it, and then go.
Yes.
So if your skid is like, we're skidding, we're skidding towards, we're a small church, we're skidding towards, well, turn into what you are in order to get traction to turn where you want to go.
So give me some examples of how you guys stayed simple in the early days.
Yeah, well,
despite that pressure.
Yeah, we would like I said, we use the principle you can do anything, but you can't do everything. So just don't try to launch everything at once. Like one of the things we did is for years, even now we're not too far. We knew that going in that what we were going to do was we had to do Sundays right. And by primary, I mean the worship service, meaning the teaching has to be good.
Yes.
And the music had to be at least, you wanted to be really good too, but it just couldn't be bad. We go after what we call undistracting excellence.
Ooh, that's good.
And what we mean by undistracting excellence is if it's really bad, that's distraction.
It is.
If you try to go way over the top that doesn't match your community and you overproduce something, that's distracting too.
Wow.
And we've stayed that way. Like you'd be shocked at how big our church is. We could probably do way over the top more production if we wanted to, but we choose not to.
So what you're saying is there's a certain level of excellence that if you're trying to put on this laser light show is distracting from the gospel.
Exactly. And so we do a little bit of that for lights, but we know what fits in our culture.
Wow.
Like I have a friend who's a church he's right off the strip in Las Vegas. And one of his worship directors had grown up in our church. When we went up there, he leaned into production where they have the fog, the ice machine that makes the fog that stays about 2 feet off the stage. It works beautifully up there. If I did that in Queen Creek, people would be like, "This is the biggest joke ever."
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, no. So for us, something that was creative and excellent, but not over the top, is like for Easter, we brought in a bagpiper.
Okay.
And we opened with bagpipes, which everyone thought that was the weird. That was awesome, I didn't expect it, and they were like, "Wow, that was really cool. It was easy. We just got a bagpiper."
And you guys have like a highly masculine culture too.
Yes.
It fits the overall feel of Rock Point.
So kind of turn into the skid, be what you're at, be the best that you are, and then don't keep it simple. And really what I like to say is you want to keep 3 things that you want to do if you're going to grow this.
Okay.
As you think about how you're going to lay out your ministry in any ministry and even your whole church is you need it to be successful, simple, and sustainable.
Okay.
And what I mean by successful is undistracting excellence. A lot of guys will put in their core values or anything, excellence.
Yeah.
Excellence isn't the goal.
What does that mean? Yeah.
It's effectiveness.
Okay.
You want effectiveness, not excellence is a tool to help you be effective. In other words, successful. So when you say successful, it goes deeper. Like part of successful, we say, is it effective? But really success is, was it effective at reaching what the win is? So you really got to define your win. Because if your win is like some guys, you start out, man, you got a great service. I've seen guys more creative than I've ever been, and our church has ever been. And they do the most creative, high-level produced thing that doesn't take people where they... And then, and what they won was people go, this is really cool. I really like it. It looks good. And then you get creative Christians and people, they're like, they just want to get you. They start coming, and then you grow a little bit, but you're it's why people are shocked that we had 10% of our crowd still come to Christ.
Yes.
As opposed to just attracting all the other church people.
Because your win is reaching
our
people for
win
Christ.
is be good enough to and that goes down to the way I communicate and the way we preach. And the other thing is, what is a win on a weekend? Well, you are to pour in and challenge and lead the congregation, the sheep, the church. You need to take them somewhere.
Yes.
So I call preaching it's like it's teaching towards a mission.
Okay.
And so I'll go deep. I'll go into deep depth in my sermons. but you got to do it in a way that doesn't confuse the outsider.
Yes.
You can do both if you know that's what you're trying to do.
So yeah, let's zoom in on preaching for just a second, because I think preaching is one of the things that anybody in any stage of church planting is thinking a lot about.
Yes.
Most guys even church plant because they want to preach. You guys are an interesting anomaly. For those who aren't familiar with Rock Point, you preach through the Word. You preach books of the Bible. I've seen you guys do some topical stuff, but you're not really a topical church. You're
We'll throw in a topical
church.
like we did. We finished the book of Ephesians, and what we'll do is we do a book. We'll often split it by sections and rebrand and call it a different series, but we're really going straight through the book. So when we got to the end of Ephesians and it started to talk about husbands and wives and kids, we actually jumped off that passage and spent 3 weeks then talking about marriage and parenting.
That's brilliant.
But that was the primary passage that we leaped on. What does it mean for mutual submission? What does it mean to not frustrate your kids' fathers? What is that? And then that jumped into it. So we do that. We'll do it, and we'll do a few, like we're doing one coming up, Rhythms of Peace, starting this week. That it's really about the how do you find peace, and it's really these rhythms, and it's relational rhythms. It's really kind of like prayer, reading your Bible.
It's the fundamentals.
It's the fundamentals. In how to so we'll jump in and do, but we mix it in, but we generally, our meat and potatoes is
Preaching the
go
Bible.
to the book of the Bible and preach what lies there.
I remember the first time I visited Rock Point a few years back, you guys were in Ezekiel.
Yeah, we did Ezekiel.
What church is just walking through Ezekiel? So you guys are an anomaly in that you preach the Bible, yet there's an insane amount of lost people who get saved at Rock Point Church. Talk to me about how God has shaped your preaching in order to do that. Because I think sometimes those are two different things. You got the Bible church and all the Christians are attracted to it, which obviously they're feeding the sheep, so that's great. But like, we're not trying to grow through transfer growth. Every church planter imagines baptizing their lost friend's neighbor, seeing bartenders come to faith, seeing dudes come out of prison and get saved, seeing guys who'd rather watch football on Sundays than ever step foot in a church get saved and their whole family gets baptized. So talk to me about why that happens through your preaching.
Well, I won't mislead. Like, there is a little bit of a giftedness to it.
Okay.
I've seen certain people have it. It's easier if it's a natural gift. Like I learned early on when I became a Christian. I think it's partially because I didn't become a Christian until I was in high school. So I can remember what it's like to still think like a non-Christian. And even though it's a million years ago now, but I didn't grow up with all the preconceived ideas of what it should be.
Yes.
And so then as I learned the Word of God, it's like I realized that I do have a knack that I can take something that could be very insider-ish and just explain it in a way that the outsider's not confused by it. So what I've learned that when I do that well, there's a couple things. There is a gift to it, but there's also a practicality to this. When a lot of believers say what they really want is, I just want some to be fed. I want some depth. I want some real Bible. And then when give you an example of what I mean by this. I've had multiple times people come to say something to me after church, and I'll have somebody walk up and say, thank you. Why? They go, I've tried to go to church before. I grew up and go to church. I never understood a word. Everything was over my head. Thank you for basically dumbing it down. And the way you explained this and that, making it so simple. And then the next person goes, we moved here. We could not find a good Bible church. We've loved the Lord. And like, finally, someone who's willing to dive in and fully go in. And you know why? Because some of the stuff that if you stop and explain context, you don't bore them with big words. You got to, as I've told some church leaders, talk dumber. It's not go give seminarian language. You got to give everyday language, because some of these deep thoughts are very practical too. So when you speak from the practical side to it, so what I'll do is I'll use the practical point to say, well, why are you saying that? Where does it say it? Well, let me show you what this is really saying. And then I'll dig into it and go, maybe if I'm not Mr. Spout the Greek words, but if something in the context or this or that, the history, I use the practical point to get them to want to know instead of the other way around. So I don't lose the person up front. You start just talking all this stuff. They're like, they have no reference to it. They don't care about it. But you start giving this practical, like, wouldn't you like to have blah, 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 or this? And here's a principle from the Bible. It's boom. And then I go, well, let me show you in this passage. And then someone goes, well, I don't see the connection. Why did you just say that, said that? Now they're curious.
Wow.
So now I give them the teaching part so they can understand how they got. And guess what? they love it and feel like I explained something to them. My Bible people are like, wow, he dove in.
Yes.
He taught the word.
Because you did.
So it is possible. I've been doing it for 30 years.
The interesting thing I'm hearing
I
is
did that with with kids in my youth ministry.
it works at every stage of discipleship.
Here's
and
the
age.
problem. It takes more work.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
Well, either way of preaching, if you just want to go really, I'm not saying stuff, you could still be very biblical, but very basic because you're really I want to speak the language of the outsider and start where they're at. Well, that's a lot easier to put something together.
I see.
And you do a little bit of
felt
work.
needs all day long.
And you can speak to felt needs all day long. But teaching the Bible like verse by verse straight through, like, I'm going to start in the table of contents and I'm not stop until I get to maps and then I'm going back. And when you do that, you could do that. But, it is, I understand why a lot of guys just like, I say we teach Bible, we go through, but it's not just the way most people teach expository. Because a lot of guys, they get in there, you look in you've read the Bible, you understand it, you studied it, you got your good commentaries. You can sit there and break down that passage and give and roughly throw in a couple practical points after you've taught it. I'm going to be honest, and people act like that's I work, I dig it. It's like I call foul on that because I've been doing this a long time. I could put together an expository message on 5 verses in about an hour with the way we have the materials, the way how easy it is to get in and study something and all that.
Logos, everything.
If you don't want to make it eminently practical, and that's why you get the group that wants the church that the guy teaches where they think it's deep if it's semi-confusing.
You lost me.
Yeah.
So it was deep.
And then the problem is either one of them are a little bit easier, but each one of them has a dead end. The one tends to not have a rate of reaching new people because those people in those churches, they want to reach new people.
Yes.
But they instinctively know, I don't think bringing my friend to church here is going to work.
It won't.
So it's harder.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the other side, so I think the reason it's harder is it takes a lot more work to go, how do I mine the depth? What is this deep of the theological statement here? Why does Paul talk about legalism so much? Now we can say, well, that's just old school. But then if you really deeply look at most of the issues we have in our world today, so many of them, when they're trying to find answers to things, it really does tie back to some of this stuff. But it takes more work to go, how do I mine the depth and understand what it's really saying? Know the mind of where the average person is, and then communicate that in a way that you cross the bridge. You put the bridge together and you bring them into that moment. And you show them that when I'm showing you this biblical character, I'm this passage, or what's going on here, you realize people haven't changed much. And this setting is probably your Tuesday.
Dude, so what you're saying here is the Bible is both timeless and timely.
Yes.
Right? It's an ancient book, but it's highly relevant because people are the same. And the Venn diagram of reaching lost people, as well as feeding the flock.
There is an overlap.
The overlap is exposition done simply and practically.
And what's funny is
sense.
To make it simple and practical is where it becomes harder work.
And that's the real work of it.
You can make it deep and confused. Like you could dive in and just give biblical teaching.
That is so good, Bill.
You could dive in and just give practical explanation. But to put them both together, you better put some work into it. And here's the thing. That goes back to what I said when I said a good program, a good ministry, a good church plant, successful, simple, sustainable. That goes with everything. Even your success. What are you really trying to do in the sermon?
Clarify the win.
Yeah, and what is simple? What's the most efficient way you can do it to be effective?
That is
good. And then sustainable is I have got to have whatever I'm doing is something that be sustainable. A lot of churches go, success is just numbers. Mm-hmm. They don't worry about they don't go it simple. They excellence. They just throw as much as they can, or they don't do it because they're complaining like until I get to this amount of money or this I can't do anything because they're not thinking. There are ways that you can do stuff. What we say on simple is you want to be efficiently effective. Now some churches they go the other way too. Just like I said, some churches, their goal, especially established older churches, they go, we want to be effectively efficient. That's what most finance teams try to do. They're and whatever you say second is the actual goal. Yes. So they want to be really good, effective.
We'll be streamlined.
At being efficient.
Yeah.
And that's why some people read simple church. They read this, they go, yeah, we're just going to make it. No, you need to be as simple as you possibly can. Simple for the sake of simplicity is bad. But effectively efficient is not the way you want to do it. You want to be efficiently effective. That's simple in my mind in ministry. So what is the simplest, cheapest, best way that I can get this done to reach the goal?
Do you have an example of how you guys have purposely been efficiently effective?
Yeah, well, a lot of it is sometimes is from a programmatic stance. Back when we built our first building, we were looking at projection for cameras, like how to project. Back then, you still projected. I mean, we still have a projector on the side because I don't care how big. I cannot afford the giant. I don't know how these churches get the giant. We have a pretty good size LED wall, but we got it half donated, half given. It's like 8-year-old technology. I don't know where they get the money for this because we still don't put one in. That's probably one of the reasons. We feel like we have enough that it gets the point across. But even back when we built our first building, the projectors, I was asking, he was like, well, I want to spend this much. Well, how much is that? And we're looking at it. He goes, well, that's a lot of money. It was like, these projectors are like $14,000. And he goes, well, I found this one that's only $7,500. I go, but is it terrible? He goes, yeah, it's probably really good. He goes, there's this one that's $8,500. And he analyzed it and he knew, and he goes, well, what does this one do over this one? Well, the $8,500 one gives us about 90% of what the $14,500 one does.
Incredible. Almost half.
Yeah. Now the $70,000 one was way too low.
Yeah.
So but don't do that just with equipment.
That is brilliant.
Do that with your ministries. Do that with the choices. Like, how much leadership do I need to do this? Like, if I can get to this point, how many in a children's ministry? Sometimes we go here's a good example I gave to our children's ministry years ago, because I did it when I was a youth pastor, is they get really worked up like, oh my gosh, Easter, this many services, or Christmas, I don't have enough volunteers. I go, well, then do your program different on Easter. Like, what do you mean? I go, older kids, you put them in classrooms, you still put 1 or 2 teachers in a classroom. Well, if they're 4 or 5, the ratios can be higher than that. You just can't isolate them. So make it a fun one. Stay in the big room.
Like the bigger room experience.
Do the big room experience. Throw videos. Make them dance around. Have games. Let them play.
That
have
is
someone
a hack
teach.
for church planners.
And dude, you can do half, maybe even a third, depending on the amount of leaders on that day, and spread them out. Now you are able to do something. And you know what? It even leans into, but that's not how we do it. I go, but the kids will remember it because it's different than what they normally do. And so now you took something that literally came from, we need some more efficiency here, and it can actually be more effective.
That is so helpful.
And you don't burn out all your leaders and stress everybody out. So yeah, so things like that. That would be an example I share. And then the last one is sustainable. And that's what my point is. It's got to be, another thing I see is when you launch, you think, I got to do all these things and launch, and I do something and I get all this stuff going, and you rally and you look awesome on your opening day. But you put together and did stuff that, what's it going to be next week?
Yeah.
Or the week after?
You have the student ministry, the small groups, the old
groups.
people's groups.
Can you really sustain that right now?
You don't have the people
on
for
a micro level. That's what we do at Easter, even today.
Okay.
On Easter, Christmas is what I see a lot of churches do is, and it makes you less effective overall, is you rent a lot of equipment, go way over the top, and your worship service looks nothing like it's going to look next week. And then you spent all that time, you might have got a crowd, they said it was great, but what do we really want in the end? We want people to come back, and we really want to get them in. Well, you just set up a wall, because a lot of people, if they go, that was the best thing ever, I'm going to go back. They come back and they go,
where's all the smoke machines?
What the hell happened to the church I saw last week?
Yeah.
And what happened? This is not the same.
You've raised the ceiling.
And what if the way you normally are, only done a little better, would actually not turn some people away?
Interesting.
Because they're like, well, that was too much for me. I don't need that. Like, and now you actually turn some people away. And then the ones that were won over by something you can't sustain are going to walk away anyways. So now you've spent all that time and money just to get, oh, wow, I had this many people at Easter. And we ask her, that's the undistracting excellence. And basically the other principles say, we raise the floor, not the ceiling.
It's good. Say that. So explain raising the floor versus ceiling.
Well, when we do change stuff and make it a little bit better every Easter or Christmas, like we'll add an element, we'll change our stage design, we move the LED wall, we add something, we might put in some more lights, we might up the bar of stuff, but it's the floor. We don't rent stuff, we don't go over there, we don't do anything too ridiculous. Like we'll bring in a bagpiper for that, but everybody knows that's a special song. But the kind of the environmental stuff that everybody rallies around, and it's not that way next week. We do little incremental things so it feels different to the people that have been coming. It's a little bit different and better. But guess what? That's our new stage design, and that's equipment we keep. So it just changed from now on. We made sustainable increases in what we do.
And it's a good investment because it's sustainable. It's long term.
It's long term. And you're just adding to it, and you're going to it, and that's what I try to tell people, even in your youth ministry, children. Hey, you're looking at all the things you want to do. These all tie together. Back to the very first thing I said. Stop looking at the things you don't have, because then if you say, all right, I'm going to try to get all these things, and you're trying to get them all at once, like I said, and my dad used to say this in battle. I quote him a lot, by the way.
It's the best.
Is if you know what you're doing, you can fight anywhere. Just don't choose to fight everywhere. That's how you lose wars, because you spread yourself out too much. So you focus. That's that thing that you do this. So that's what I would tell guys, that the preaching, back to the original question, preaching, the worship, if you're starting a church, that's got to be good. The experience in there has to be quality, but quality for the size you are, in the sustainable way, and all of that, and always be raising the floor. And one thing, raise the floor, is always raise the floor of leadership.
Okay. What do you mean by that?
Well, you got to get good leaders. But what we've learned is rarely do they just show up and they're already completely cooked and ready to go. And sometimes they're one of the worst people to trust, because when they come in all ready to go and they're leader, they usually are all ready to go somewhere you don't want to go.
Yes.
And then you empowered them, and they actually know how to lead. And so they Pied Piper your people away from where you want to go.
Wow.
So
dangerous.
So here's another one. Don't complain about you. You go, well, I have these guys, they're willing, but they're not that great. Well, when you're new, you better you need to not, I'll develop leadership later on. This is a mistake I made. I always did pour into leadership, but I did not think it through and have it as detailed out that I had other things. So I've been working on it over the years. And so my big soapbox to you, even as coaching you, is get a good leadership development plan and start. We need to bake our own leaders, because they can't be microwaved. And so you need to start right away, raising the bar. Take who you have, that if they're willing. Like, we always focus on just competency. You know what? If you have someone that's not that competent, but they are all in, they trust you, they're committed to like, as we say, our 4Cs, they're committed, they got character, and you feel like, I think they are called, they could be a leader. I'll give you all day to learn the competencies. And so start that soon. That's even raised simple, sustainable. Like, you got to start building leaders now. And you're always building leaders.
Okay, so speak to the church planner who's like, Bill, of course, that's such a good point. I want to raise up new leaders. I want to invest in them. But you don't understand, I don't have any time. I'm writing these messages. Me and my wife are setting up and tearing down. We're trying to figure out just how to get things off the ground. Where am I supposed to find the hours to invest in leaders? What would you say to him? Like, how would you bake it in? That
It's simple.
Baking these
one
leaders?
of the things you said, like, the messages you got to spend the time on, the vision casting. But I think if you are called to be a lead pastor in a church plant, you better consider that your number one job description,
Okay.
other than, the character of love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul. I'm not talking about
That's
your
it.
personal. I'm talking about the job description as a lead shepherd.
Sure.
Is you better narrow it down to the primary things you need to focus on is being the primary communicator, vision caster, teacher. So you do have to, if you're going to be the guy speaking on the weekend, you better do it well. You're also the primary vision caster, and you are the primary leader developer. And my answer is, don't do very much other than that. You're going to have to start doing some more of the direct pastoring at first. And I had a model of how I backed out of that. So there was a time when we started, and here's how we did it. There was a time when we started that when we did door hangers and stuff, it was my cell phone number that was on them. Because I didn't have anybody do that, the pastoral kind of calls, and I was pretty good at explaining. Plus, I figured a lot of them want to know what the church is about, and I was the best one at explaining it. So why don't I do the one that's talking? I get caught in. I did some pastoral things, but I had a plan for how I was going to get out of that, to not do it all. But what you just said right there is, the thing is, I'm setting up, I'm tearing down, I'm doing this. You're going to be shocked. Every church planner is ready to get shocked. In the history of Rock Point, I was never there for setup. I stayed around at teardown. But when we launched our service, I was never a part of the setup team. I did not have to get there. And you know why? Because I had a good executive with me, Randy Deal, that understood this is what you need to do. He helped build that team. And then I honored them and said, they're like our special forces. Special forces goes in and out of mission. You never knew they were there. You just know the result. And they were there and gone, and you never knew it. And he got them there. And early on, you got to have somebody around you. When people would say, why isn't Bill here? He's like, well, Are you going to be with Bill when he's talking to people about their marriage and stuff for 2.5 hours after the service? Are you going to go to lunches with him? Are you going to be with him until he gets home at like 4 on Sunday because it's a work day? And he got there at 8:30, 8 in the morning. You got here at 5:30. You were done by 7, and then you went to breakfast and went to church, and you're done. And he goes, you're here so he doesn't have to be. You see, the understanding is, bottom line, here's putting scripture in a practical life.
Okay.
The role of the pastor is to what? Equip the saints to do the ministry.
It's good.
Then why do you think you're doing all the ministry? The only reason I did all the counseling is we had nobody to do it yet. And so guess what I did? I found somebody as quickly as I possibly could. I got references. I did this. And then I backed out of it. I did weddings. I did funerals. Now I just do the weddings and funerals of people I'm close to or I know or something like that. And I still do those things. And there's a balance between, I'm not the first one that everyone in the church, I want to talk to the pastor. I want to talk to the pastor. I haven't done that. But what I did do, because I think it's a humbling thing, I think you always have to shepherd, but mainly you start shepherding your leaders.
Wow.
But the one thing I will do to stay humble and to show is I keep an hour and a half a week on my schedule open. It's first come, first serve. Anyone in the church, anyone that's ever come, anyone's like, I would like to talk to Bill. Well, if you contact my thing and you look out, if that hour's open, I'll sit and talk to you.
Yep.
And what I do is I still do it.
I take advantage of that.
I'll still talk to people, but I don't let it overrun me. In other words, what you're doing is you're fighting the battle of you're not building leaders. And if you launched a church, if you went to launch phase and you still needed to be on the setup and takedown team, you did not build a sustainable ministry.
It's good.
Because you can't sustain it if you're doing all of it. And so the problem is that's why people fight me. I was like, you need this many people. Well, I got this many. It's going good. The giving's fine. It's like, well, do you have all your teams filled? Oh, no, because I only have 65 people. Because you know why? The reason we say 100 is to really launch a good service on a weekend, you need to have almost 100 people that are
on the launch team.
On the launch team.
Yeah.
To really be able to do the basics you need and make it sustainable. Otherwise, you started behind.
Yeah, week 2, nobody's there to set up, tear down. No one's there to.
And even with the 100, you know there's going to be attrition. Some people realize, I guess this wasn't for me. Some people are going to flake on you. So if you start with 50, you're going to be down to 30.
Yeah, it's a
and
problem.
then you wonder why the church can't get going anywhere.
There's no rotation.
And so what do you do?
You're burning volunteers out.
That's why a lot of guys that plant churches don't stay as they grow. Because a lot of guys that plant, you got to have vision. You got to be that special kind of stupid. Usually you can get up there, you can rally people, you can do all that. But a lot of times the personalities of those of us that start a church were not really the nuts and bolts. Like I call it, a leader needs to do 3 things.
Okay.
They don't need to do it. They just know 3 things need to happen.
Okay.
You need to define reality. You need to be able to dream that preferred future of where's the mission taking us? Where are we supposed to go? But then you need to develop the pathways to help people get there.
It's good.
And Nehemiah is one of the few guys, the first chapter, you see all 3 of those. He got them all 3 done. And it looks like he was pretty good at all 3. Most leaders are not excellent at all 3. There are some freaks in the world that they're excellent at all 3. Most have one that you're really good at and one you can do pretty well. You can be good at 2 if you're a good leader. And one you're like, I understand it, I know, but I'm not that great at it.
Will you repeat the 3? So it's define the future,
define reality, dream the preferred future, and develop pathways to get there. So in other words, I need to be the realistic. You almost need. I need to be an accountant or a consultant kind of thing. You have to have that brain that you can see. Where are we actually?
Yeah. You're the secret
without
shopper for your own organization.
Without having rose-colored glasses, you got to be on. You don't want to be an Eeyore. And you don't want to be Mr. Overly Positive that it's not even, you don't want to be that. And you don't want to be somewhere in between. Like you don't want to be Eeyore and you don't want to be Ted Lasso. You don't want to be like too extreme here. You got to look at it in reality, because if you don't know where you're at and you know where you want to go, you don't know how to get there because and so then you got to go, where do we need to go from here? And then you need pathways to get there. Now that I call it the calling of a leader. If you don't care, you don't even have to be the one that makes all those happen, but you understand I'm responsible for making sure all of this happens. That's a leader.
Yeah.
If you don't care about that, I don't care what else. I don't need to know anything else about you. You're not called to be a leader.
Wow.
Because that is the calling. Every leader not just in church, any place a person is called to lead, that's what it's called to. And the problem is a lot of guys don't even realize that, or they don't understand that they think they can do all three really well and they can't. And so you don't get people around you. Like, for example, I am really strong at defining reality and saying the dream, here's where we need to go.
That makes sense.
I understand systems. I'm explaining them to you. I've put them together. I spent part of my ministry career having to do it, and it was good for me.
Yeah.
And in a pinch, I can do it. But overall, the reason I'm not that great at it in Pathways is I can design them better than I can deploy them. And I get bored with them.
Sure.
So what I need is, you basically need the accountant. Accountants just tell you what you have.
Yeah.
You need engineers.
Yes.
Are going to say, here's how we get there.
Yes.
Architects are the one that make you, here's what it's going to look like.
Wow. And you're the architect.
Yeah, I'm an architect who can also account.
Define
I can sit there and go, here's where we're at, but here's where we need to go. All right, how are we going to get there? And so
Dave Sutherland's here's how we're going to get there.
And that's, so okay, how do you pick an executive pastor? Right? Well, there's certain skills they better have, but one of the best ways is, which ones are you the best at? And get a guy that you can compliment. Like for Dave Sutherland, I am really good at reality and dreaming. Dave is really good at the middle, bridge building, the engineering,
yes,
Pathways, and dreaming.
Yes.
So where we meet is in the dream, and where we work together is he can design the pathway, but I can decide. I can say, but you realize what's really going on here, right?
It's good.
And so we work well. We both see the same future, but I'm able to point out, here's where we're at. And then he's like, okay, if we want to go there from here, I know how to help with Pathways. And so you surround yourself with a team of people. Like early on, people go, you need another dreamer. You need another dreamer. Guys, if you were planting a church and you're going to you're going to try to get a couple other staff people to go with you, and maybe you get a little group of like 4 or 5.
Sure.
Do not get 5 of you.
Wow.
No matter what you are. Because if you are 5 dream the future type people, but you're not good at the others.
No one has a plan.
You know what I call those? When people go on retreats, leadership retreats. That's why so many leadership retreats, I call them wishful thinking retreats. Because you go and you have a great time. You were crying together, you were laughing, and you came up with the greatest stellar dream you could ever, and nothing ever happens.
0 implementers.
You know why? Because nobody can implement, and no one really can define, like, you realize what you just said there? You're so far away from where you're actually at that you think you're going to go from where you're at to that in one step.
Wow.
So that's kind of the idea of the simplicity, and how do you practically go about doing these things?
Bill, you are one of the few pastors who's traversed both seasons. The launching season, where you grand open a church, you have a lot of momentum, the Lord's hand is on it, you're baptizing people, it's exciting. But then when things get messy and the church needs stability, usually I've seen a lot of guys either step out and leave the church in that season, and someone else takes it over. And that guy has the organizational skills to take it to the next level. What's really neat about you and everything you just described is the reason that Rock Point still has its founding pastor. You've been able to both dream the future, define reality, but you have delegated and hired and brought on people who can build systems to bring that preferred future into existence. And I think that's one of the things that if you're a new church planter and you've launched the church, I think that's one of the reasons that some churches don't continue to be impactful, don't continue to grow and make more disciples, is because they don't know how to do that. You've done that. Dave has done that. Randy's done that. And that's just an incredible insight for our listeners today.
Well, one other thing I can add to
Please,
that is that's practical, is when you look at that, what I'd encourage guys to do is, they struggle. The reason I was able to do that is I prayed about it first, because I knew that people said, oh, you're catalytic. You're the type of church planters. You're good at getting stuff going. You're going to get bored. And they said that you should just plant a church and every 5 years lead. And I said, dear God, no. I don't have the energy for that. I really don't. So I said, God, if I go plant a church, so far, and if God tells me he wants me to go somewhere else, I will. But so far, my prayer had always been, if you would allow me, I want to see a long-term commitment. I asked God, can I only pastor as a lead pastor one church?
Wow.
That's all I've wanted. But they said, you're going to get bored. I go, why do you think I send people now and I train and to talk with you guys? That's how I let out that part of me.
So good.
It's almost like I'll live vicariously. I'll experience it all over again. That's what I love about it. That's what I love about your story. I love about hanging out with you. It's like I'm seeing this gifted guy that's called by God that I can help, but I'm pretty sure this guy's going to climb on my shoulders, stuff my head down, and go further. And I'm okay with that because I know I got to be a part of that. And that's how I go and do more and don't get bored and do all that. But the key in there is when you get a team, the problem that holds people back is when you said delegate. But the problem with delegation is most people have two extremes to it. Delegate is they find someone, they dump it, and they run away. And then and that's where they run amok. And sometimes they do good, but sometimes they start going in a different direction and mission, and then they battle you. And then you're all mad and you have these huge splits. We avoided that because the other extreme is you think delegation is, I'm still going to tell you what to do. I'm just going to give you the list and I'm going to delegate you to do all the tasks. And depending on your personality, there's some of these guys you're going to listen to this. If you already planted a church, you know which one you are.
Yeah.
And you wonder why. And here's the problem. Delegate means this. You give authority with responsibility, but you give authority commensurate with the responsibility. And the one thing they don't have authority on, that what you really need to focus on when you spend time with these leaders, if you're going to delegate, is you want to stay relational connected and missionally connected. That's what you spend time with. You want to make sure that we get along, we have fun, we connect relationally. And when I'm coaching you, I don't want to always just tell you, here's what you're going to do. If I have a person on my team, I don't want to tell them how to do their job. If I'm going to do that, I'll hire a high-level assistant that costs less than them, and I'll do their job, and I'll give myself a raise. Because I'll spend more time doing your job for you. And then the problem is if you spend all of your time, if you think delegating and coaching is let them take a ministry, but then your coaching is always telling them what they need to do, like actually how to run their youth ministry or whatever, what happens when it fails? Who's accountable? Who needs to learn the lesson here?
Yeah.
I can't go chew out the youth pastor. If I know that one of my lead directors has been telling the youth pastor, and now it's not working, they're not working out. I go, well, no, the only thing we know for sure is you're not good at doing that ministry. That's the only thing I know.
We have no idea what they would do.
We have no idea what they would do. Well, I just can't let them free. Like, you're afraid they're going to run. You know what? If you stay relationally connected and you make sure that the one thing we do not have a choice on is this is our mission. This is how we word it. And this is what a leader is. We have the same language.
Yeah.
The language of leadership, the same language of the mission, the same understanding. And I tell people, listen, the Tower of Babel stopped getting built in one day, and it wasn't because those people lost their abilities. They lost their language.
Yeah.
They didn't talk.
That's good.
They couldn't relate. They couldn't communicate. So that's it, man. And I would say lean into that. That's what delegation is.
That's so
Stay
good.
relational. Be there for a problem. Be there for them. But be there on here's the principles and here's our mission. That we say we let leaders lead, but we don't leave them alone. And what not leaving them alone means we're going to care about you. We're going to care about you as a person. We're going to care about you. We're going to care about you relationally. We're going to help you in times of need. We're going to do all that.
Accountability.
But we're also not going to leave you alone in accountability. But what are you accountable to? We're going to make sure you're on the same page as we are missionally. We're going to make sure you use the same language we use.
Wow.
So we're all speaking the same language. So the thing that God's asking us to build doesn't get halted just because we can't talk to each other anymore.
Dang, that's good.
So,
dang, that's good. So you did touch on something that I want to conclude today with, and that is that you've stayed on fire for the next exciting thing vicariously through church planting. You have sent out more people than I think most pastors of churches your size in the United States, if I'm not mistaken. Part of that is you guys are part of Vision Arizona. Part of that is just how you're wired. You have coached, developed, and given away more dollars, more people, more resources, more key leaders than I think any pastor I've met. I've spent a lot of time with pastors and leaders. It's really rare what you do, man. Maybe I just don't know enough, but the idea of sending out a megachurch to plant a whole new church, and not just somewhere in the state, but down the street, is an unheard of thing. Rock Point is not the logo on Echoes today. No. You've given your teaching pastor full license to recruit who he wanted. And you guys not only sent him out with dollars, with a salary, but you sent hundreds upon hundreds of people, and probably still are in some ways. You've sent away staff members. So talk to me a little bit about that story. What are you smoking? Like, why? Why would you do that? That's a bad idea in most people's mind.
Well, I'd like to sit here and go, look at how magnanimous. See, I can't even pronounce the word. That's why I have to talk dumb.
You're a little philanthropist. What other big words are
Yeah, I know. That's the biggest word I know, I think, and I can't even pronounce it. So I just think I learned it because in the end, of course, when I watch sports and all this stuff, and I remember and I think about great coaches and great players, but then they become a coach, and I want to win a championship too. I want to be good. But the thing I'm always amazed with is coaching trees. Like some of the greatest coaches of all time. This guy might have won, but it's like, and then some people are like, he's a great coach, but every coach that came off his system doesn't go anywhere. I'm like, there's something even bigger about, hey, say you win one championship instead of 5 as a coach. But you raised up these coaches that go on to win like over the next 20 years. Wow. They go on to win like 18 championships or whatever. They just go win a bunch of championships. Like, I honestly feel like I feel good about that. I'm taking claim to some of it. Like, because my prayer has always been for me and our church is, God, I know it's you, but I know you call us to do something too. He gives us a gift, but we have to use it well. So I know that. But what I ask to be is I go, God, whatever it is, I always just wanted a front row seat or get to be the tip of the spear on something. And if I can pass that on, that's a legacy kind of thing. And I guess as I've gotten older, I think about it more. But I just think about the people that have thrown themselves on the barbed wire for me, the people that have helped me grow, that let me climb on their shoulders. And I know that, wow, I know that part of what I've been able to do, they should be thankful. Like, hey, I wouldn't be here if you didn't do that.
Yeah.
So guys like Lynn Winters, you know, I'll argue with him sometimes because he's old, but no, but
and argumentative,
and usually wrong, but still no.
What else?
But
We got?
I go way back, and he was my youth pastor. I've known him for 40 years, dude. And guess what? I learned a little bit of that principle from him.
Okay.
And then I'm the type of guy that takes things to the extreme. If I like something, I'll eat 3 times as much of as I should. If I do this, so if it's like, hey, this is something I think I'm going to go all in. Yeah. And I don't know. It's just for me, I feel like there's something in my heart that says, someone says, well, what if like they started, what if when we sent Echoes, what if they take like 3,000 people and our church struggles and we never quite make it back and they grow and get huge and they start churches. They do. And I just said, guys, you got to understand how I'm wired because I know I'm going to stand before God and I know I do a lot of knuckleheaded things. I'm a sinner. I'm just like Paul. I can sin as much as anyone else. And I'm not the most gifted in the world, but I have always been the guy that says, I'll take what I do have. And I will fight with it and I will dig in and I will go as far as I can with that. And I want to know, that at the end of the day, just like in a good sports, like if I collapse on that field of battle, exhausted and bloody, at least I can say I was victorious. And I hope that I can do that. So I tell people, I go, so what? What if this gets a big enough church and I slowly take what I've had as I get older and we send people, and then this church just kind of fades away. As a matter of fact, it gets to the point that one of our daughter churches not too far away needs a facility and like, come back and let's just absorb you back in and now take it over and go with it. But by doing that, by spending ourselves on that field of battle, Rock Point plants 50 churches that start planting 50 churches. And you raise up that next era of communicators, of leaders, and you do that. I mean, I feel like that's what I would rather do. Because I think in the end, if, like I said, I go back to my original thing, effectiveness over excellence. And if I get to be a part of helping start, if you add up our daughter churches that we launched without just by us just sitting churches rather than just trying to keep our name on everything, we had from like a year ago, the last time it was just us, we had like 12,000 at like a big service and we were averaging like 5,000, 6,000. You add up just in the last 2 years, the churches we've launched, including you, and we take that as a part of we helped get this done.
100%. We wouldn't have been able to launch without you
Our
guys.
Easter attendance was 24,000.
Jeez.
That's double our best it ever was with just us. And then we did that. That's 2 years.
That is unbelievable.
And so what if we all keep doing this together? That's why I am pretty much kind of a guy that's like, it's not just this greatness in my heart. It's I actually do like winning. I like victory.
Sure.
I like to know that I did everything I could with what God gave me. And I like to see the victory. I like to have a front row seat. And I figured doing this was the most efficiently effective way to have that impact.
You've defined the real win.
Yeah, that's
And
what I
it's
think the win
Matthew
is.
28.
Yes, Matthew 28.
Go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them. And I think what's special about you and the team at Rock Point and all of Vision Arizona is it's a group of people, a group of leaders who've said, hey, the win isn't. I think a lot of pastors are really good about thinking about the win in the next 15 years. I'm going to have 3 campuses and 4,000 people in 15 years. You guys have thought about the next 1,500 years.
If Jesus
Churches
doesn't
that
come
plant
back,
churches.
yeah. If Jesus doesn't come back soon, and plus the stat is still true. You can look at any stat. I mean, I'm not anti a satellite campus or anything like that.
Sure.
I'm good with them. But the stats still prove true that which organization reaches the highest percentage of new believers based on its attendance is a new church. Not a campus.
Wow.
New churches still reach people at a much higher rate. So is my goal to have more people in a church building, or is my goal to make more disciples?
Incredible.
And so in my view, plus I know how to plant a church. So I'm going to lean into what I know how to do. And that's what we do, we try to do, and that's what I want to keep doing. I get to do it with you. And I'm telling you guys, I'll just say, if you happen to be a larger church out there that or even a medium, like we started early, if you're a church that's never thought about this and you're afraid, I am telling you, it is more fun to do it this way. That's the best part, because you get to be on podcast with a guy that you got to help get started, and you're like, wow, this guy really is sharp, and it keeps me young. We put you guys in cohorts together, and I am telling you, we have actually adjusted some things we do because you can learn from each other. It's not just because you just started. It's like you're thinking differently. So you're hungry. You're figuring like, I hadn't even thought about that in 5 years. And I'm like, we ought to think about that. I mean, we went Matt out at Orbit that just got going, and he launched, and I went to his launch, and he had QR codes on everything. It was so easy to do anything. You want to give, do this. Yes, I look at my executive, it's like, why don't we have this?
That's
we
awesome.
still have to, you got to go. If you want to give online, you got to go on a website, you got to sign it up, or you put money in an envelope and stick it in a box. I'm like, why don't we? And so now we have QR codes everywhere.
Incredible.
It's like we learn from each other. That's the other thing. So guys, it's not just about, it is about the kingdom and the effectiveness of the win, but in the win, we also get blessed, and we can have our individual wins can be bigger and better, I think. So yeah.
Bill, that's incredible. It is not a zero-sum game, as you guys have sent out 2 churches at least right down the street from you guys. You guys have continued to grow, reach more people. It's part of the story of what God's doing. Bill, you're one of the most humble, kingdom-oriented, innovative, and outside the box thinking leaders, I think, in our generation. I appreciate you coming out here, making so much time today. If people want to follow what you do, where should they go?
Well, you go to rockpointchurch.com or whatever and look at what we do as the church. But it's a weird thing. But of all this stuff, I believe social media is great to have, and it works. Our church uses it, but I got off of it a couple of years because when you said time and distraction, just the way I'm, that's a whole nother podcast, dude. A whole nother podcast.
We should do one then. Yeah.
But thank you for having me, and just want you to know that you're a blessing. Like I feel like it's almost a blessing from God for me to say, have I been effective, and do I know what I'm doing? Because I think I'm trying to help. And then a guy like you asking me to come and coach you, and then I watch the way you have been used by God and the way you're gifted by God. I go, hey, this guy would actually run with me. That actually affirms me.
Dang.
So I love having a quality guy like you in my life, my friend. So thank you for having me.
You're the best, Bill. Appreciate you, man.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Thanks for watching.